Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Build Your Best Life Blueprint for Success. I'm your host for this evening. My name is Jocelyn Charles, and I have our wonderful guest, a return guest. We love to hear her speak, Miss Ashley Medford. And we are
Hello.
talking about today the journey for adoption through the eyes of African American boys. Ashley, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Well, thank you for coming on. This is, I believe, our first time that you and I get to have a conversation together on Build Your Best Life. So I really do count it
Yes.
an honor. I've listened to you speak before. You're very knowledgeable in this area and passionate about it. And so we love the nuggets that you share to the parents so we can better equip our young men who may go are going through a similar journey. And so thank you for being a part. I want to also say hello to our viewers. Please comment in the chat and greet one another. And make sure you like or put some hearts on this live and share the live. Invite some family and friends to join in and tune in, or you could just share it to them directly so they can watch it on demand. If you haven't, please make sure you follow both platforms of Build Your Best Life on YouTube and Facebook. So, Ashley, without further ado, we're going to get right into it. I see that you have the honor to share some of your knowledge for 2 weeks. So, tonight we're on week one, and we're talking
Yes.
about exploring the early challenges African American boys face before finding permanent homes.
Yes, ma'am.
So, to explore early challenges African American boys face before finding permanent homes, why are they disproportionately represented in the foster care system?
Well, it kind of starts with the birth mother. Once she starts making that decision, she may not know a lot of different resources as far as adoption goes. So she may go to maybe, the first thing she sees on TV or maybe in the email. And so it's not really going to be the birth mother having a large, I mean, now some do, but most mothers, because it's such a sensitive topic, they're going to go with what is similar, what they've heard, maybe word of mouth. So with that being said, you don't have a large um, leverage when it comes to spreading out the population of the African American boys in certain areas, and that goes per state, right, per country. We're only speaking on the U.S., but we don't know what other continents do. But as far as the U.S. goes, once that birth mother gives up her child, and that is a process, right? Because that child has to go through a foster home for so many days while the legal paperwork is going on, and then we don't know if it's an open adoption, meaning that the foster mother can still come back in the picture, or if it's a closed adoption and that mother can no longer see that child until after they're of age at 18. So either way, um, once that adoption has gone forth, we don't really know the vicinity of the area of how many of them are out there, right? So, it may be that, more mothers in the South give their children up for adoption, and there's numbers. Every state has adoptions, and for a number of reasons too. It could be, the mother died at birth. It could be a tragic accident. It could be a criminal situation. It could be, all type of different reasons of why those young African boys have been adopted. So with all those different platforms, they're kind of sporadical of where they're going to go, then those numbers are not really able to be dispersed into an average amount of different adoption homes. So that's why it's kind of spread all the way out. And then from there, once that child, depending on their age, is actually in an adoption agency, or they may be with an adoption home, meaning it's a group home of adoptive kids. Um, then that process starts. And so that next process is basically the resources for that child in that home. So it could be that that parent, foster parent, doesn't have a lot of resources. um, or it could be that that foster parent wants to become an adoptive parent, and now they, adopt that child, and now they're using all their resources. So it kind of just depends on the platform, from the birth mother to the adoptive home, as far as the different agencies of whatnot.
Okay, it sounds like several things you mentioned are factored in to why they are disproportionately represented. And I know you said it starts with the birth mother and the resources that the foster parent may have, as well as the platform that's facilitating the process. Am I understanding that
Right.
correctly? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, those are a lot of different variables there.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what are some of the common traumas these boys face or experience before entering care?
That depends on the age as well.
Okay.
So, obviously, if it's a newborn, that's different. If they're going to be in a group home with multiple kids, that's different. um, versus a foster home versus an adoptive home. So all of those platforms matter depending on their age. So let's give an example. You have a newborn baby that's coming into an adoptive home. They're going to come in and they're going to just be, adopted in. So they're going to come in just like a brand new baby. Versus you have um, an adoptive child going into a foster home. Now that trauma could be, maybe they've been placed in multiple homes, and now those multiple homes have traumatized that child. It could be molestation, it could be beatings, it could be starvation, it could be that they were locked up downstairs in a certain area or closet areas. There's so many things that can go on. They could even be laundry, sex trafficking. There's so many different things that go on because all those parents have to do is pass the qualifications. If those parents pass the qualifications, yes, the state does come and check on them, but different states check different ways.
Okay.
And if there's no red flags that are being drawn to that family, and when they come and do their visitations, if there's nothing that's visible, then there may be some things that kind of slide up underneath the rug. And with most of those situations, you don't hear about it until after that child has grown up. And then now you start hearing about all those different stories. Me, a victim as well. You hear about all of those different stories that come out at a later time of, they were mentally abused, they were physically abused, they were rationed food, they were rationed clothes, they were bullied. But then you have beautiful successful stories too, right? um, but just as far as this, just speaking on the trauma, like I said, it just depends on the age of the child, and what age they are, and if it's a foster home with a group of kids, or if it's adoption. And then two, if it's a adoptive home, that could go either way too, because it's all about mental health. Those parents could have started off with a good well-being to bring that child into that home, but then maybe something happened. Maybe a relative passed away, they lost their job, maybe they got divorced. Anything could happen, and what they meant to have as a loving home for that child could drastically change throughout the years. And now what was supposed to be a good ground turns into a negative ground, or a ground of just chaos and confusion. So I think majority of this is, the platforms are always good, right? We need the foster homes, we need the adoptive homes, we need the centers and the advocates and the resources. Everybody wants to help, but life just lives. And so with that, the trauma comes in many different forms and shapes.
Okay. That's very unfortunate, and it's just terrible to hear that dealing with the challenges that they have in front of them, that they still may face some traumas while in foster care. And I'm just curious, I'm just going off script a little bit. I'm curious that when the state comes and check on a child in foster care, from your knowledge and from your experience, do the state have a moment to take the child off and have a one-on-one with the child, maybe go to the separate room, or and just have a dialogue with that child, or it's just to come in and see how the family is functioning together when they come to
Um,
do a check?
each evaluation is different, right? I know a lot of people probably look at like the movie Precious, which she wasn't adopted, but like welfare checks. That's what you would assume it to be. But every state is different, and every advocate that comes in from their state office is completely different. So you're going to have some people that come in that are going to look at every crevice. But you're going to have some people that come in that just kind of just do simple checks. All right, see you next year. So every representative is going to be completely different. Every state is going to be completely different. But we have to take in consideration there are thousands of children that are going through this process. And it's even a little bit more, probably more simplified if you look at like the movie Annie, how that representative would come in, and the foster parent would just woo them, to where they really wouldn't see all the flaws behind the scene. So when you're looking at a foster center, there's a lot that's going on, so they may miss us a lot of those red flags because a lot of those things are hidden. The children could be scripted. So there's a lot of different things that can go on. It just depends on the platform. When that representative come in, they could have 100 visits to do that day, and then you're taking in also the mental clarity of the representative, the child or children, and then the caregiver. So you got all those three different mindsets that's trying to put the best heart of the child, up front, as they say. But unfortunately, this some of it falls through the cracks. So, not to, have a disclosure about anyone, everybody intends to do the right thing, but again, there's just some things that just slip through the cracks. And unfortunately, you have children like us that, dealt with some of those traumas.
That is very unfortunate and sad that there's not enough resources to protect every child. It
Right.
is an imperfect system, but it's just really heartbreaking to hear and know and have to accept those things. So
Yes.
tell me, how does racial stereotypes and implicit biases affect their chances of being adopted?
Um, that's kind of tricky because it still starts with the state of mind, the heart of that person. You do have some people that want the same gender and want the same ethnicity, of, hey, I'm Caucasian, I want a Caucasian child. I'm African American, I want an African American child. But we're in 2025. People just want healthy kids. You
Yes.
know, I want to go in there and this adoption agency, and I want to see the child that just gravitates to me. Just a pure heart. And or you have some foster agencies that come in and they just want to take up as many kids as they can.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the different um, pro- um, perceptions, when you look at that, all of that just depends on, what that caregiver is intending to do. So, if they want something, if it's a pure adoption and they want a healthy child, or they want something of their same ethnicity, or if you're dealing with an adoption agency and they just want a group of kids, that's kind of like the two. But again, that's going to depend on the caregiver and what their, maybe their grants, like if it's a group home, maybe what their grants does, their organization does. If it's an adopted family, maybe what they want their family to look like. So all of that just kind of plays on the perception of what I think is best for my home. And unfortunately, the child can suffer from that, right? Because just because you want a Caucasian child in your home because you're Caucasian, that may not be the best fit for you. If it's a newborn child, that child could have some, unknown illnesses that you didn't know about, that maybe now you're going to have to take off of work for, because things happen in children as they grow older. So it's kind of hard to kind of have those standards to stand on when you're bringing those children into your home and you really don't know. You can tell if the child is of age, though. If they're a teenager, or maybe a middle schooler, you can kind of see those different things and kind of decide um, it's sad, but it happens. But yeah, so it just depends on the mindset of the person that's coming in, whether it's an adoption or it's a group home that's just picking up kids or adopting kids.
Okay. So, have you noticed, or have you found in research, or just noticed in your journey in coming up that most foster care families or those who are looking to adopt are would choose a young African American girl over an African American boy? And if so, why do you think that's the case?
I think I've seen it 50-50 because if we use like the example of like Angelina Jolie, she's taking in children that have been of any of ethnicity. So it depends on the person. My mom, if we use her as an example, she wanted a little girl that looked like her.
Okay.
you know and so that was what she that was in her mindset, right? I'm pretty sure, yes, she wanted me to be healthy, but she did want a little girl that looked like her, and that stems from, it's crazy, but it stems from, young ladies playing with their baby dolls. You want a little girl, a little boy that looks just like you, because girls are taught to be in the house and help mom with the kids, and boys are taught to be outside doing their thing and don't come back in this house, coming in and out, make sure you
Right.
outside and come in before the street lights, come on. So all of that kind of plays into the perspective of what I want, right?
Okay.
Um, but then a lot of people don't stop to think, does that child want me? Because we don't have a voice. You
Wow.
know, we are just sitting there like ducks on a shelf, you know, trying to be the shiniest trophy. Am I gonna get chosen? I was already given up once, and I'm just sitting here just watching people just pass me by, and now we have all these identity issues because it's like, am I not good enough? Why didn't they pick me? They plenty of people come in here all the time, and no one ever comes back here to get me, and years of that go on, and so all of that kind of goes into perspective. I know the question was, the parent or the caregiver choosing the child, but then I was just adding in that no one ever looks at the situation as, does a child want to get picked? Maybe that's the question.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that Ashley is frozen. We're going to give her 1 second to see. I can hear you now. For a moment, you froze. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. But I'm glad you're back because you were making some great points. You made a profound point, actually, in in stating that no one asks the child, no one considers or asks the child, or the child doesn't even have a voice to say if they want to be selected, if they want to go with that family. And I'm pretty sure there's been instances where children have, shown um, a disinterest with going with a particular family, but if the family chose them, the child doesn't have a say so. And I don't think that's something that the general population really gives a lot of thought to. And I wonder if there's some measures put in place here currently with more information and resources coming to surface, if that's even being considered with some of the state institutions with trying to place children into homes to get some feedback and know the understand the heart of the child as well. That was very profound. So how does community breakdown, poverty, or systemic inequality play in this stage? What role?
Um, it's kind of hard when you do the community, right? Because um, no matter how much you look at the community, it still goes back to the individual. I mean, the community can help out as far as um, they can provide resources once that the individual goes to, because it could be like, say, a situation that um, a mother and father were not together. The mother was pregnant, maybe she passed away giving birth, and the father decides that he doesn't want to keep the child. So the father gives the child up. He doesn't know where to go, right? So he reaches out to his community. His community provides resources. And so, but they may only have 3 to 4 resources of different communities of adoption agencies or adoption group homes for children. So it kind of just that community can only be as big as, and there's a title. The title is called the economic developer. So every city has an economic developer, and that economic developer is supposed to go out to every chapter of its economy and make sure that those pillars for the foundation of that area is set in place, that they have done the best that they can do as far as finding the top tier resources. But we don't really know how diligent they're seeking or what resources being provided to them, because again, they have to handle the entire economic. So, if that parent, male or female, only goes to their community and that's as far as their reach is, there could have been something else had they chosen to go out of their state or dig a little bit deeper, because some things is you don't know what to trust, and so they're just going to go to those quick resources.
Mhm.
um so yeah, it just kind of depends on the status of that community, the welfare of that community, the mayor of that town, the economic developer. If they're strong, then they're going to have that strong relationship whether that community is in poverty or not.
Okay. That's really good. That's good stuff. Because, of course, the adoptive families, they're going to start with the community that they live in. Majority of them. That makes a lot of sense. I totally get it. Okay. So I have one more question here for you. I want to know,
Okay.
and tell the audience how, in your opinion, how can agencies better recruit and prepare adoptive families of color?
Ooh, okay. Well, the first thing would be just getting to know them. So allowing them to know that there's different processes, right? This process, especially if the family is pregnant. Um, you know, um, in the pregnancy process, they're going through all the different challenges of the pregnancy. So having someone that is continuously talking to them, not just kind of just leaving them by the wayside like they came and had an intake and they'll check up with them when it's around due time. No, actually having someone that can actually, check in with that mom maybe once a month, a couple times a month, and just really building a family relationship. Because again, this is a true serious matter. You're letting someone that's supposed to be a part of your family, your legacy, be placed in the hands of someone that you honestly don't know. And you don't know the family that it's going to go to if you have a closed adoption. So making sure that you have that personal friendship, that personal relationship, so that when that time does come for you to, part ways with your child, that know that process is not going to be easy, but you have a partnership where you're okay with the choice that you're making. And you're okay with that choice, because there's going to be times mentally that you're going back over those thoughts. Did I make the right decision, not just for me but for my child, the father of my child? Are we all making the best decision for us? Is this just a temporary you know decision that I'm making that's long term? Especially if it's finances, can I just go find the finances? you know if it's a criminal situation, is it something that can be handled and I can still have the matter of my child? Or is it just something that I cannot deal with? This child is just going to be better off, mental capacities. I'm just not ready. Maybe the mother was raped. Whatever the situation is, just making sure that that mother, that father, that family, they have built a strong personal relationship with that advocate, with that representative. And then along with that, they know like the actual adoption agency, right? They went in there, they've kind of talked to the staff, because what if that representative is not available? You know, I can't talk to anybody else in there. I have questions. I'm reconsidering. I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling all these thoughts. Can someone talk to me? My representative is not there. Well, if you have that family, you're able to call anyone, whatever their policies as far as times and stuff like that. You're able to call someone. You're able to call on your partner, your friends, your family, and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Can I just talk to someone? And so that those matters can get handled in, due time, and then afterwards, the aftermath, right? Now that the transition has happened, the court, the legal documents, the child has parted ways, there's an aftermath. It's not just, you know, I had this baby's gone. It's the same thing, that we as mothers go through, with postpartum depression. And so now this child is going, and I'm going through postpartum depression. I need to be able to talk to someone. I have a closed adoption. I can't talk to this child, and now I'm feeling all of this. They need to be able to have that as well. That wellness, that being able to be taken care of. Maybe the mother is panicking that she's feeling all these things. The child is not right, and maybe she wants to go back and redo everything if she can, whatever the situation is. It could be the dad, right? Or a family member. It could be anyone, but just making sure that every part of the adoption process, there is someone that will be there. They have a plan of action. That's the beginning, the during, and the aftermath. And even if it's a couple years, can I, do I only get you guys for just a year? Can I ever come back a couple years down the line? Can I change it to an open adoption? Just knowing all the rules and rights that's there. So, once that child is of age and that mother and father have come to an understanding about their decision, as time goes on in life, there's no regrets. So,
I That's good. Yes, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
Um,
you. I was trying to
so
sum it
yeah,
up, sir.
what I'm hearing is, so it's the responsibility. Well, of course, the agencies, they have a responsibilities, and we all know that all parties can up their role in the adoption process. But the parents looking to adopt, as well as the mother considering to give up her child to adoption or to foster care. Should also have that relationship, that binding relationship with the agency. They should do their homework, and the agencies should offer some type of aftercare or aftermath provisions for both sides, for the mother that gave up her child, as well as the parents who took this child into their home. So it's like community.
Yes.
Is really having a relationship and having a rooted relationship. So like you were just saying, if the representative is no longer there, could people leave jobs and go here and go there? But if the agency is a company that's rooted, that they still feel comfortable going back to express whatever their needs are in the aftermath, after the adoption or after a child's been placed in
Yes.
foster care. I love that. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I can imagine that some from the mothers who are giving up their children for adoption, you know, maybe they haven't allotted themselves that time to develop that relationship, because sometimes some decisions are made hastily, and they just haven't thought things through because of whatever their situation is. But that's still very, very good. Well, Ashley, I
Yes,
really
it's a lot.
enjoyed this conversation. Was there anything you would like to add, to close out, to helping families better understand the challenges of African American boys, the challenges that they face when it comes to finding permanent homes? Do you have any last words of wisdom?
Um, I would just like to say, don't just stop at the first resource you see. Even if it's your local community, your local state, it could be out of state. It might even be out of the country. But just please take all of the advice and the advocates and the representatives and sit and meditate with it. Think about you, think about your child, and think about the person that's going to adopt them. Put all of that into perspective so that that young man has the best chance at being the best person in life. And no matter what they're going to go through emotionally, they're going to go through it. But when you do have that conversation with them one day, or if you choose not to, that they can say, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for making the best decision that you could do, no matter what. I understand that that decision was hard for you, for me, and the person that's even going to take me in. But thank you for making the decision, because you could have made the decision not to do anything, but you made the decision to make the best decision for me and for the community that's going to be around me. So just take the time to meditate on that.
That's really good. Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your nuggets of wisdom, understanding, and compassion for this topic. We greatly appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you on again. Ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please share this broadcast with some loved ones who you may know may be considering adoption, foster care, or a struggling mother, future mother and father who are thinking of their options of giving their children up for adoption. And so they can be well versed and get as much information, and so they can do their homework and before they reach out to certain resources. And so we greatly appreciate each one of you tuning in today. Again, please make sure you like this live and give it some hearts. Make sure you have subscribed to both YouTube as well. Follow Build Your Best Life Facebook page. You're watching Blueprint for Success, and we're so grateful to have you with us tonight. And you all have a blessed and wonderful week. Bye.
Yes. Bye.